The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
My name is Jasmine, and I am a recovering drug addict.
My name is Richie Farrell, aka the Old White Junkie.
And we are your hosts for Exit Team Nashua.
Our mission is to bring recovery into the living room.
Last year, over 72,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose.
That's almost 200 Americans every single day.
We will bring you guests with real-life experiences with addiction and recovery. Welcome to Exit Team Nashua. Hi, welcome to Exit Team Nashua. My name is Jasmine, and I'm a recovering drug addict. This show is about bringing you people who have real-life sufferings with drug addiction, alcoholisms, and any kind of sufferings, and gives their experience with that, and then gives their experience with what their solution may be in their recovery. We take people from all walks of life. We have drug addicts, we have alcoholics, we have people who are trauma survivors. It doesn't really matter. The suffering's all the same, and what it's about is it's about offering and instilling hope in others. So for those of you that watch the show every week, Bobby's not here, but we have the beautiful Miss Meredith.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome. So Meredith has been someone that's been a mentor to me since pretty much the day I got sober. You know, you have been very involved in my life during my early recovery, and even still today, like, you're someone that I talk to all the time, and you still mentor and guide me. So it's an honor to have you on the show.
It's an honor to just be in your life. It really is. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And so our guest today is the beautiful Miss Maggie.
Hi. So I'm Maggie. I am a person in long-term recovery, and I actually currently work as a substance abuse therapist. So I have a little bit of experience on both sides of the fence as far as like dealing with substance abuse goes. And I think it's been a really interesting time to like move from being a person that's like been in treatment and been a part of a program and gone through those steps as like a person trying to get sober, and then being able to take that. And I actually was in grad school when I got sober, so
I remember
it was really scary. And then to make it through grad school and have a master's degree in mental health counseling and like choose to work in this field, it's really something that like I didn't really think that I would be able to do, because that boundary of like putting my own experience into practice, but in a way that like I'm not taking advantage of my clients either, or knowing that like I'm not a sponsor in any sort of like way, shape, or form. Like I'm their therapist, and that's my job.
Keeping the separate,
yeah. And it's, I mean, you work in treatment too, so you know like the struggle.
With boundaries.
Yeah, I think
she can't relate to that part.
No, I think it's.
But I'm really proud of you.
It's one of those things where like that boundary is really hard, because like as a therapist, you're taught in your training that like you're not supposed to self-disclose for personal gain. You're supposed to self-disclose if it's going to help your client.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's one of the things that I've like had a really hard time with, is figuring out where that line is. And for me, being 27 years old and being a person in, I mean, I guess I would consider it long-term recovery. I've been sober for 3.5 years. So being a person in long-term recovery at 27, sometimes I have to disclose that to my clients in order to gain some sort of trust with them, because a lot of them tell me that like I don't really look 27. So there's that. I remember in my first internship,
I find it hard to believe you're 27.
I know, but I am. In my first internship, I had a bunch of clients. I was running a group one day, and they were like, what could you possibly know about this? And I had 18 months sober at the time, and like I hadn't disclosed to them that I was a person in recovery yet. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, I don't really know how to explain this to you guys in a way that like doesn't go against what I've been taught I'm supposed to say to you, because it shouldn't matter if I'm a person in recovery or not. But I just want to let you guys know that like I've been you. I've sat in your seat, and like I sit here on the other side, and I pay $75 a week to do an internship here, and they were all like, you pay to be here? And I was like, yeah, so let's talk about that. Like I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to. And being able to sit with them and like have them like identify that like I'm not just there because I learned it in a book.
You have to pay to do an internship?
Yeah, it depends on, you have to, if you need outside supervision and your agency can't provide it for you, you have to pay an outside supervisor.
And
Yeah,
Wow.
and my outside supervisor costs $75 a week.
Okay.
So, for a year, I
had
paid
no idea.
$75 a week for outside
Even more
supervision.
grateful for all the interns now.
Yeah.
They work so hard.
Harder than
The interns work so hard.
Yeah,
The interns
harder
are
than we do.
great.
Yeah. And being an intern in substance abuse was like one of the most amazing things that I've ever gotten to experience
I
too,
bet.
because like I learned so much. My clinical skills were tested in every way, shape, or form, because substance abuse treatment doesn't just come with like a strict diagnosis of being an alcoholic, being an addict, or like you use these substances, so we're going to apply this treatment plan. Almost every single person there has some other anxiety, depression, some
right,
other
yeah.
diagnosis that goes with it.
Extensive trauma.
Yeah, extensive
Oh,
trauma,
sure.
especially, and it's not to be like gender biased, but especially women,
Yeah.
women that have been in like active in the substance abuse world, women that have been using for a long time. There is no way in which those women don't suffer some sort of trauma, and a lot of time that trauma cycle is really, really scary. Where like either they get into substances because they had a trauma, or as a result of using substances, they find a trauma and then they use more substances to cover it up, and then there's more trauma, and then there's more substance use. And it's about breaking that cycle and being able to like create an environment where those women feel comfortable enough to share that with you. And like in general, women in substance abuse, like women in long-term recovery, there's not enough of them. And like maybe there are, but I don't see them. I don't know where they are. I don't know if they hide at single gendered meetings that I don't attend or something like that.
I was gonna say
but-
at a lot of like recovery gatherings,
Right.
in my experience, I noticed that the ratio is much larger men to women. Like we're talking like 1 woman to
I think
10 men.
and I think it goes back to I always love it when I see women come into treatment, because so often, we're so busy taking care of everybody else that we tend not to take care of ourselves. So
Yeah.
I think that can be part of it, and just the expectation, like even just all throughout history, it's been that women are stronger.
So SAMHSA puts out
Right.
a bunch of like materials on, so they're an agency, a government agency that does stuff with substance abuse, and they put out
Okay.
materials that are like manuals for how to run
Yeah.
treatment and all these things. And there's a specific women in substance abuse treatment manual. And if you read this manual, which is really boring and really dense, so like don't read it.
Okay.
But this manual literally says that the number one reason that women don't go to treatment is because they don't have treatment options for them that allow them to maintain contact with their children.
Okay,
and
that makes sense.
Like men can go to treatment and
Yeah.
leave their families, and it's good job, you're doing great, you're doing
Their brains function totally
You're
different.
you're
though.
doing a
They're
really
okay
good
with
thing.
that.
Yeah,
They're genetically
that's
made
right.
that
Yeah.
way.
And for women, it's
That
a
makes sense.
struggle to leave their
Yeah.
children. Women are reprimanded by the court system if they leave their children. If they have a partner who wants a divorce and they go to substance abuse treatment, they're
looks
now
bad.
seen as unfit mothers. Where
yeah.
if it's if the roles are reversed, like that man is doing what he needs to do to get better for his family. And there's just such a stigma with being a woman in recovery, and it's really hard and disheartening and sad.
Yeah.
Like it's really sad to see that these women don't have like an active voice in recovery. Where I work now, it's a wonderful treatment center, but we have a good like 2/3 men of our treatment program is men versus like 1/3 women. And the success rate, I mean, it's not to say that it's any better or worse in either of them, but like you just see that there's a lot more pressures that the women are under.
I would say in
For
my
sure,
experience with
for
working
sure,
in treatment, statistically speaking, the men's success rate is higher.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
for some reason. I don't know. I think there's
Well,
a lot
women
of
are usually on a timeline too. There's that expectation that you have to be home
Right,
after
have to
X
get
amount
back.
of days. So it's like I was told this is a 30-day treatment, and most treatment centers don't operate on a strict 30-day model anymore. They operate on a like 30 to 90 days or 30 to
Thank
60
goodness.
days. There's a flex model, which is
Yeah.
awesome because
Yeah.
we can like take people where they're at and we can meet them. And if you have a lot more trauma or a
Right.
lot more mental health diagnoses to work through or other things, like we can set you up for success that way. But women that are on a timeline because they have to be home for their children, or they can't miss Christmas, or they can't miss holidays, or any of those pressures. Like, that's really, really hard to do.
Women are so much harder to work with.
Yeah.
Listen, we are.
Oh my God.
We really are. And because I've worked in for so long,
Yeah.
almost 12 years
Yeah.
now, with men and women, and I love us so much.
Yeah.
I would rather work with 20 men. I'd
Yeah.
rather have the ratios. We are very hard. We're very
At
complex.
one point, I was working with like 20 women, and I think it was like 20 men and like 4 to 5 women, and the men were doing great. And literally for like 10 to 12 hours a day, I'm with the women, and I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, like the women that I know in long-term recovery that are like strong women in long-term recovery, when I first got sober, they intimidated me.
Sure.
And I think that's, I don't want to say part of the problem, but that's one of the things that comes up is like women are conditioned in our society to view other women as competition and not as like a collective force that you can utilize. So there's nothing scarier when you're new in sobriety as like a strong woman who knows what she's doing, who
Confident,
knows how to work
integrity.
her program,
Sure.
all of those things.
Yeah.
Like those are the women that in my early sobriety I was like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Like, nope,
Yeah.
I don't want to be around you. And like
Yeah.
ultimately those are the women that I now surround myself with.
That's
and
right.
like I have to like work with the women that I work with at my job and tell them like strong women are not your competition. Like that's who you want to surround yourself with. Like find that tribe of women that are going to hold you up and like carry you when you can't carry yourself. And like my personal story like in recovery has shown me that like women will always be there for
That's
me.
right. That's right.
I know like Jasmine alone, I mean, I tell this story frequently, like I went through a time when like my marriage fell apart and I was still pregnant and I like couldn't physically get out of bed every day. And Jasmine would either call me or FaceTime me or Snapchat me at like 6:15 every morning, like spinning around in her desk chair, already at work, already having meditated for like 45 hours. I don't know
45 hours?
Yeah, it was something like godly. I don't know how she did it. And like it was just like that she would call to make sure that I was showing up for life.
Yeah.
And like that's just because I found these strong women in my life
right.
that were like, you can't do this for yourself today, so we're gonna do it for you.
Yeah.
And then like ultimately like that pregnancy like wasn't viable and I had a miscarriage and like I called another strong woman in recovery like the day that I was in the hospital and she like didn't want to ask me like, do you really need me there? Like, or like, are you sure? And she just asked me what room I was in and she showed up.
You were there. Yeah,
and like
that's awesome.
a year later, because I was so consumed in self and in grief and in all of those feelings that I was feeling at the time, a year later I realized that the day that I called her was her son's birthday.
Aw.
And she showed up for me that day. Like and that's an amazing thing to do because like to be able to like ask another woman like, hey, I can't do this by myself, can you show up for me? And they don't even say like, are you sure, do you really need me, whatever it is.
We don't
like they're
even
just
think
there,
about
no
it.
question.
That's right. I think that's part of that instinct that you were talking about too with the mothers and why they don't go to treatment. We're very much that way with each other and you know, just, you know, loving in each other enough to hear truth, but to, you know, pick you up when you can't stand up, you're on your own. That's what we do. It's
I would
pretty
not
cool.
be here without women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
it's so
not
cool.
be
Yeah.
sober without
Yeah.
without women. I mean, there are definitely some pillars that have been put in my life, but like even just like the foundation and the network of women, I wouldn't be here. I didn't know how to be a woman.
Sure.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to be a woman. I didn't know how to be anything other than like
Yeah.
street bridge critter, I guess was my name.
Bridge critter?
Well,
yeah.
no, so we
Like even
use
homeless is
we
like-
Yeah,
use
yeah,
the
yeah.
phrase like
Yeah.
women of dignity and grace.
Yeah.
And like when I came around into sobriety, like I didn't understand what that
Sure.
meant.
No.
Because dignity and grace were not things that I carried
No.
myself with at all.
Would never experienced them.
No.
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
that like I was joking with you before, but like I'm a pretty high bottom alcoholic, right? Like I don't have experience with homelessness. I don't have experience with all of these things that like other people might have experience with, but I definitely was doing things that like were not living up to like my moral standards and to the like the woman that I want to be today. And like now I'm able to not only like find other women that I want to be like, but I'm able to be that woman for somebody else, which is
It's awesome.
it's baffling to me when someone's like, I want what you have, and I'm like, you want this? Like, this is what you want today? But like, it's because of like all of those strong women that came before me that carried me when I wasn't able to do it myself.
It's so cool. Yeah.
Women
That's
have
cool.
taught me to be okay with myself.
Yeah.
Because like you're like, you want all of this, because like, you know what I mean, to some people like I might seem like well put together and externally, you know what I mean, like of course like I take time to do my hair and my makeup, but like I'm a mess, and that's okay. Some areas of my life are really good and some areas of my life are really messy, but that's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
the thing that I've learned in sobriety is like being able to trust the women around you, right? So like I can tell the women in my life that like this area of my life is an actual mess, and they're not going to use that against me.
That's right.
Which is something that I feared for a long time, was that
Yeah.
like, because like in that early sobriety mindset where women are still competition, that's where
That's
it comes
right.
from. Is
That's
like,
right.
if I tell you this about myself, if I get vulnerable with you, if I get honest and show you who I am, are you going to use this against me?
That's right.
And the things that I've found is like the women that are actually doing the work and showing up and being like champions for recovery and like who actually want a change in this system, like those women are never going to use that against me. They're going to tell me that they understand, that they've been there, and they're going to share the messy part of their life with me so that they know that I'm not alone,
Yeah.
which is like the
It's a
coolest
beautiful
feeling
thing.
ever.
Yeah.
I've done some really terrible things in recovery, and women have not judged me. They've loved me through it, and they've guided me through it. And I've come out on the other side okay
Yeah.
through those things.
Yeah.
It's-
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty great.
Yeah. It's totally crazy, and like I never could imagine that my life would look like this, right? Because like
I've known you for a while now. Actually, it's funny you say this because I think when we first met each other, we didn't like each other.
I have a vivid memory of one of
Speaking of women in recovery.
I have a vivid memory of one of the first times that we hung out after a funeral. We were at Denny's. I'm sure that you can recall the time.
Yeah,
and there was you know some talk of like some spiritual stuff, and like I was very not spiritual at the time, and it was like I don't even remember. Oh, there was a God Squad T-shirt. It was like brought up as an idea, and I was like, that's going to be a hard no from me. And everyone just stared at me, and they were like, did you really just say that out loud? And like that was when I was like really crass, and like I was not kind, loving, and tolerant in the same way that I am today. And like there's a place for that. There's a place for directness and things like that. But like it's just so funny.
Who would have ever thought that we would become like, you know, in this close knit group of women, and like we're all so like I always talk about some people. I'm like, oh, it's my best friend. Oh, it's my best friend. People probably get so confused because I have so many best friends.
Yeah, and
I was thinking that today, actually, when I met everybody here.
it's so funny though because like I
it's
look
true,
at
though.
it and like all of the women that I surround myself with in my life, each of them has like core components of like the woman that I want to be, right? And like there are definitely some things that like I cannot emulate from these women, and like some things that like I don't desire to emulate.
Sure.
But there's a part of them, like a part of each of them that like there's a reason that they're in my circle. And I've been going through like this weird personal crisis in the past the past like 5 months, but like more the past week since my mom passed away, was like, how am I going to do this? Like, what is my life going to look like without her here? And like, I like use this example that I feel like is so crass, and like people are going to be like, why are you even saying that? But I was like crying to my mom before she passed away, and I was like, what's going to happen when my kid falls off the couch and I need to call somebody to tell me that like everybody's kid falls off the couch once and it's okay? I was like, who am I going to call? And like all of the women in my life, when I say that to them, they're like, well, you can call me, like I have a kid, or like I'll tell you you're not crazy or whatever it is. And I didn't realize how blessed I was that like I have been able to build this awesome support system. And like it's really unfortunate, I find, that like other people who aren't in recovery like don't know what this looks like, because like there's not, I mean, I guess I'm not a normal person, so I don't know what normal relationships look like or things like that, but most of the normal people that I know don't have a tribe of like 12 women behind them that they can reach out to at any point in time and say, hey, this is the thing that's going on. And then like at least 8 of those 12 people are going to say, call me right now, what are you doing? come grocery shopping with me, or
Right.
some mundane task
Yeah.
that like they do just to make
get
you
you
feel
out.
normal, and just to
Yeah.
help you get out of yourself and get out of your own head when like you're stuck in this really dark place, because like we all know what that looks like. And I mean, in the past 3.5 years, there have been like multiple occasions when like relapse has been like a very real, like, and very justifiable answer to the problems that have happened in my life. But like these women in my life didn't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And like they didn't allow it because they know that like that's not what I want either. And being able to be honest and open with them and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling today. And like, I like really think that like using would be a good idea, and have them say like, what's your life going to look like if you do that? With
Sure.
no shame, no judgment, instead of like, why would you ever do that? And like an attack, like
Yeah.
they just say, okay, I mean, we could do that, or what's the alternative? And like, that's
Right.
a really cool relationship to have with someone.
Yeah.
And it's not that I can't have those relationships with men, but I just find that like with women, they come in like the most pure and like beautiful form.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Where I'm at, I don't even like have friendships with men. I just don't. My time is so valuable, and there's so little of it between like work and, you know, like self-care is an important thing, meal prep, gym, everything you have to do. Like, I don't have much free time, so I would rather spend my time with my women.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, no offense to men. Y'all are great. But, you know, Maggie, when you were talking, you're like, God, don't get offended here, but you're just this little peanut, right? You are. You're just like, but you are such a powerful being.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's so weird too, because like I feel like I've never felt that way, and like coming into myself in recovery, I think that's like really what I did. Right, in the past 3.5 years, I've done a lot of like soul searching, a lot of like introspection, a lot of looking at who I am and what I believe and all of those things, and like being able to be confident in them without question too. So like I don't have to agree with people or like with their point of view. Especially working in treatment, there are some like treatment models that like I'm not necessarily a fan of.
Amen.
But it doesn't mean that like I have to like change who I am because of it either. So like,
right.
yeah, I think like there are certain things that work for certain people. I know what works for me, and I like to try to be open and honest with my clients about like that there are different options, and that like I really hope that you find the one that works for you. I tell them all the time, I'm gonna like throw everything at it and see what sticks, because like we might as well. Like, what do we have to lose at this point?
That's right.
But like I know what works for me, and what works for me is like working a very rigorous and honest program, like, and what also works for me is like utilizing outside things too, right? So like I have gone to therapy for 5.5 years, like religiously. I mean, I've gone to therapy a lot longer, but like in the past 5.5 years, I've seen the same therapist. We meet regularly. She knows everything about me. She saw me before I got sober. She saw me while I was getting sober. She saw me while I was married. She saw me while my marriage fell apart. Like she saw me while I was like dealing with my mom's hospice and all those things. And like being able to like know that it's not just one path for everybody, and like that like 12-step fellowships are really wonderful. They're a beautiful place, but that sometimes some people need something else too. And I've come to accept that like I'm one of those people that needs something else. And like I don't think I could be a good therapist if I didn't actually believe that like other things work too. And I tell my clients that too. Like it might not mean therapy for you, but it might mean therapy for you. And like
right.
it's just like every good therapist has a therapist. That's what I've heard. So I like really hope to be a good therapist. So I kind of try to hold to that one. But it's crazy to be able to like sit here and be confident in yourself and be able to say like that, like unapologetically, this is how I feel about it. And like unapologetically, how I feel is that like women are underrepresented in treatment and in the recovery world in general. We don't have nearly enough programs for women. That's something that's like, the first job I ever had in recovery was at a women's house, and it was like more like a therapeutic community for women 18 to 25. And when I worked there, I was 18 to 25. I like belonged in that population. I wasn't sober, and I learned a lot while I was there. And it was one of the most strict and rigorous programs I've ever been around and exposed to. And like they are so successful. That program turns out women that like turn their life around, and they have beautiful things now, and like they're 18 to 25, so like they have their entire life ahead of them, which is amazing. But like there's not many programs like that, and like that's in Massachusetts. Like the state of New Hampshire does not have many, if any, there's one women's only program maybe. I'm not even entirely sure if that's like.
I know that we lack like funding.
Yeah.
For that. Yeah.
There's not many women's only programs. Like,
unless you have like a rocking PPO policy, you're not getting much treatment in New Hampshire.
Yeah, and most of the drug addicts and alcoholics I know do not have a rockin' PPO policy.
Well, yeah,
unless you're 23 years old and still on your parents' insurance.
We don't even have the financial funds for that. You know?
Well, there's no state funding for treatment. It's very limited.
It's limited. We have some. Yeah. It's limited.
But I mean, comparatively, I think the last statistic I read was that we were like tied for 48th in the nation for like treatment.
But we're the
funding.
armpit of America, isn't that what Donald Trump called us? We're like
we have
third.
We
in
have
the
like
country.
the number 2 or 3.
Yeah, third in the country.
Drug epidemic like numbers, like people dying here at like a rapid rate, and like
I know we just got like how much money did we just get? We're running out of time here.
Like
We have $48 million. But if you think about treatment funding, and that's going towards mental illness, that's going towards substance use disorder, it's going towards like a whole array of things, homeless shelters, all this. That's not nearly enough money to even touch the problem that New Hampshire has.
One of the biggest problems with that funding comes from the fact that so the state owns all of the liquor in New Hampshire. The state owns liquor licensing. And from that liquor sales, there is supposed to be a percentage of that money from liquor sales in the state of New Hampshire that goes directly to substance abuse treatment. That's why the state owns it. And every year, that funding does not make it there. Every year, we do not meet the percentage that we are supposed to meet. And like, why not? Like, why? What are we doing? And for a long time, like, there have been statistics and things that say like UNH has like the #1 per capita beer consumption rate in the entire nation over party schools that you hear about all the time. Like per student, the #1 beer drinking rate, and like we're not funding treatment.
Sure.
We're not funding those things. And like it's really disturbing when you think about it. And I understand New Hampshire is the very like live free or die state motto. I get it. I love it. But like sometimes when you look at it and it's like live free or die, unless the things you're going to do are going to hurt other people, then the state of New Hampshire will intervene. You can get a $128 ticket for touching your cell phone while you're driving because you have the potential to hurt somebody else.
Sure.
But if you go to the emergency room to get treatment, like you're going to be turned away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, I mean, for me being, you know, having been in recovery for a minute, to see somebody like you that just is coming up and doing all these great things, you know, clinically and 12-step wise for women. And I get excited about this because we need you and love you. And it's an honor to be in the trenches with you.
Yeah. We're out of time. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Meredith, Maggie, for coming on. Love you guys.
My name is Jasmine, and I am a recovering drug addict.
My name is Richie Farrell, AKA the Old White Junkie.
And we are your hosts for Exit Team Nashua.
Our mission is to bring recovery into the living room.
Last year, over 72,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose.
That's almost 200 Americans every single day.
We will bring you guests with real-life experiences with addiction and recovery.
Welcome to Exit Team Nashua.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.